Welcome, everybody.
Hi guys, welcome. Welcome Maria, welcome Karen. Welcome to Jan, that's a nice wave. Something to scroll through and looking at everybody. Bridget, lovely to see you. Fabulous. Kathleen. Yuko, hi. Marjorie, welcome back, I recognise you. Hi. The Hilliers are back. Lovely to see you. Hi, Glenys. Hi, Hugh. Nigel. Great. Give me a wave if you're totally new, so I can give you a shout out. Ruth, Paula, Yolanda, Christine, Deb, Joanne, loads of people. Cindy, Mary. Welcome. And give me a wave if you're a stay-at-home choir veteran and you've been here since the dawn of time. Hi, Sue, Sandy, Ninka, Orla,
Hi,
Charles.
everybody.
Hi, hello. Good stuff. Andy, hi. Jackie. Going to go right down to page 17 now and have a look at who's on page 17. Oh, Kate Blanchett. That's lucky, isn't it? Oh no, Kate Blanchett with an R. That's a shame. I thought we had a celebrity amongst us. Hi, Keith and John. And Wendy, I thought you were waving, but it's actually just your ceiling fan rotating in the background. I was scrolling at speed. Great. Now, I love playing this game. We have a membership from all over the world. At the last count, we had 74 countries involved in the stay-at-home choir. And I would love to know, we do try and take into account everybody's time zones, but could you give me a wave if you are joining at a thoroughly inconvenient time? Has anybody got up in the middle of the night to be here today? If so, we'll promise we'll try and accommodate you next time. Give me a big old wave if you've got up at a really horrible time of night or morning to be with us on this Zoom call. Gone past your ceiling fan again. Oh, Maria's walking down the street. Oh, there's lots of pages to go past, but it looks like everybody's being. Oh, there's one. Nasa, can you unmute and tell us where you are?
Hello, I'm in the Philippines.
Wow, cool. What time is it for you?
1:01 a.m.
That is dedication. And now I know you've done a project with us before. What project have you done before?
Just the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that your first one?
Yes, with you guys, yes.
Cracking. Fabulous. Well, welcome back. It's good to have you. Anybody else want to give me a wave and tell me a horrific time of night or morning that you've, anybody else showing dedication? No? Oh, well, that's good. I'm glad we've managed to accommodate you all. Great. And there we go. I think that takes us to 6 o'clock and everybody's in, all 26 pages of you so far, 637 people and counting. This is all the spaces for this Zoom filled up. Zoom can only accommodate 950 people, with a few sort of extra bits and bobs for emergencies. And so we've also got people watching on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. If you're not in the Zoom, I hope you're also enjoying watching us live on YouTube. I've just been told we've got 260 people watching us on YouTube. So welcome. That takes the total number to more than 1,000 for this welcome webinar and our first rehearsal with none other than the internationally renowned vocal ensemble VOCES8. And fresh from the middle of their Live from London series of online concerts. So let's kick off. Without further ado, my name's Tori Longdon, and together with Jamie Wright, we run the Stay at Home Choir, which is an online community now of about 7,600 members we've got on our books. And about 4,000 of you have signed up to do this project with VOCES8. So it's wonderful to have you. I am a conductor in London normally, in the olden days, as we say now. And it's been my absolute pleasure to get to know loads of you over the course of the Stay at Home Choir and to find out more about your singing where you are in the world. So welcome. And I'm going to hand over to my co-founder and colleague, Jamie Wright.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. As Tori says, I'm the other 50% of the first two members of the Stay at Home Choir, now joined by a much larger team and 17,500 people from around the world. While Tori is the sort of organizer of lots of things, I am the sort of, I like to think of as the super geeky side of the operation. I spend lots of my time listening to all of your recordings and doing lots of the techie stuff in the background. So I am also a conductor and a singer based in London. I also sing with the a cappella group The Swingles for our Swingle project that was released only yesterday. We made it. It was out, so I hope you've managed to spot yourself already. Now, today's session is, as we say, is our welcome to the rather wonderful VOCES8. There are going to be lots and lots of technical questions that I have no doubt you will have. We have an enormous FAQ and a wonderful and incredibly patient team in Rachel Holt, who we will try and introduce just before we pass on, or perhaps a little bit later, ready to answer your questions, and an FAQ that we've been questions. So leave your technical questions about the recordings and how that kind of thing might work for now. Today is your chance to really get stuck in to meeting and talking to and working with VOCES8. So I really hope you enjoy this. I know I'm certainly incredibly excited. So Tori, back to you.
Hi, great. Okay, guys, so a little bit of Zoom etiquette before we pass you over to the stars of tonight's show, which are VOCES8. First of all, like Jamie just said, we try to keep this as a musical rehearsal. We have an unbelievable amount of expertise and musical and vocal talent in the room this evening. So if you've got any technical questions, either check our FAQ, pop them in an email to contact@stayathomechoir.com, or just ask us in a Zoom drop-in lounge, which is when Jamie and I hop into Zoom and absolutely anybody can drop in for a chat. You can ask us about vocal things, you can ask us about recording things, you can ask us life's existential questions. Everybody is welcome and anybody can join in. So try and keep these your questions here to primarily musical matters. You'll have a chat box. We will, at some points, we'll allow you to unmute yourselves, but because there are such an enormous number of people in the room tonight, as you can imagine, if everybody could unmute themselves willy-nilly, as we say in England, it would be carnage. So we're going to stop you from being able to unmute yourselves at some points, and at other points, you'll be able to unmute and ask questions. If you have anything burning, pop it in the chat. Rachel Holt, our wondrous admin member, is managing the chat tonight. And I just want to say, think twice before you post in the chat, because for some people, if they're not able to disable the pop-ups, it could be that every 5 seconds there's something pop up and some people can find it distracting. So feel free to use the chat, but just think twice before you post, so that we're not putting anybody off. You can disable the chat pop-ups in your Zoom settings. So if you're not sure how to do that, give it a Google or find out for next time. We've asked everybody to come having found a copy of the score. Now, could you give me a wave if you've got a copy of your score on a tablet or printed out? Go on, wave them in front, wave them at the camera. Excellent, fabulous, good. Lots of scores, lots of lovely flappy paper. Great. If you don't have access to a score, head to the Caledonia page of our website now, and you've got all of the information about how to find that score. There are free versions available, but they're not downloadable and printable because that would contravene the copyright of our arranger, Blake, who's here with us tonight, and also of the composer. So if you do want to buy a copy, you can find one from Sheet Music Direct, and all of the details are on the website. Okay. What else have I got to say? Great, and definitely make sure you've got a score for the first sectional next week. Great, well, that's me done. I'm going to pass over to Paul Smith, who's the CEO of the VOCES8 Foundation, to say hello, introduce himself, and then he'll pass on to the rest of the VOCES8 team. Hi, Paul.
Hello, it's very, very nice to see everyone here. Goodness me, Tori, when we started talking about this, I knew it was going to be big, but this is really quite something, isn't it? It's very exciting. And just on behalf of all of us in the VOCES8 Foundation, we are thrilled to be a part of this amazing adventure. In VOCES8, we basically have two things that we do. One thing is singing concerts, and I hope a lot of you have seen us on stage at some point or heard us on record. And the other thing we do, which we're passionate about, is finding ways to get other people to sing. So it's really a very simple life that we lead, either singing ourselves or trying to get other people to do that with us. Normally we do that in real life, but as you will all be aware, because of lockdown, that's not something that's been possible now for quite a while. So our world is kind of transported into this virtual world, and we've spent the last few months doing all sorts of events, both educational and in terms of performance. So Tori, I think you mentioned that we've started this Live from London series. It's been an absolute blast for us, not just to get to perform, but to host some of the best artists imaginable. And there's this little group called the Swingles, who many of you have just been singing with, who are going to be coming to join us on Saturday. So if you do want to find out more about how you can come see them in concert, you can find all sorts of information at VOCES8.foundation. I think the Swingles have got info on their website as well, so just go and check it out. And thanks to the stay-at-home choir community for being as supportive as you already have been. We want to just have as much fun as possible with you in this virtual space, and we hope that in the months to come, even though we're going to get back to singing, this is something that's actually going to be a new community. I think for us, one of the things we've found over the last few months is that, yes, we aren't able to give concerts, but actually in discovering this new forum, this new world of online virtual choirs and really pushing at it, there have been people all around the world who are making exciting new things. And I think Stay at Home Choir is right at the forefront of that. To have this incredible community is hopefully something that's going to be embedded in what we do in the future and actually live beyond this. So we're thrilled to be a part of it at this stage and to be working with all of you guys for the next few weeks. And I think it'd be really nice just to introduce all of our team. So I'm going to go from the highest voice to the lowest voice in VOCES8, and let's see if we can find a little spotlight for them to come and say hello. So the first person to introduce you to is our high soprano, Andrea. Andrea, are you around somewhere?
I am. Hello. Thank you very much, Paul. So my name's Andrea, as you've just heard. I sing top soprano in VOCES8. I actually started singing when I was about 8 years old in my parish church choir, a very tiny little place down in Kent in the southeast corner of England. And just loved singing, joined every choir that I could growing up, and then went and studied music at Cardiff University, which is also where Sir Carl Jenkins studied music as well. So a little link with your previous project there. But he was, a favourite alumni of our staff at university. I joined VOCES8 straight out of graduating from university, so that was about 12 years ago now. So it's been over a decade of really enjoying traveling and singing with these guys. And I'm also a big Lord of the Rings fan, so big kudos to those of you who managed to translate and decipher that clue that the team put out, trying to tease you into who was going to be next. And I wrote that little note in Elvish, so yeah, I'm proud of all of those of you who could translate that. Next, on to Eleanor.
Hello, yes, my name is Elle and I sing second soprano in VOCES8. And I've been singing with the group for just over 3 years now, just under 3 years, about to start my 4th season. And I grew up in Yorkshire. I've lost most of the accent because I spend a lot of time with the rest of VOCES8 and they all speak much better than I do. So my accent's changed quite a lot. And then when I was 18, I went to study at the Royal Northern College of Music. Much to my father's dismay, I crossed the Pennines over to Manchester, and I've not left there. I live here now. And that's basically me. Big fan of coffee, also big fan of Lord of the Rings. Basically me. Cool. On to Katie.
Hi, my name's Katie and I sing first alto in VOCES8. I've been singing with VOCES8 for about 2 years now. I was one of their scholars on their training program before I joined, so had an extra year to get to know them. I'm from Peterborough. I started singing when I was probably about 11, and then when I was 12 I joined an organisation called the National Youth Choirs of Great Britain. So I've already met Tori and I've already met Jamie. I think Tori was my section leader for about 2 or 3 courses, so I spent quite a bit of time with them, and obviously you guys get to spend time with them. They are amazing. So this is going to be so much fun. Anything else to know about me? I've never seen Lord of the Rings, any of them. And it's kind of got to a point where I don't feel like I can watch it because it's become such a thing. And I'm aware that that really hurts the feelings of Elle and Andrea.
Lockdown is the time.
Quite possibly. On to Barney.
I think as part of this project, we need to have Katie make a list of all the films she hasn't seen, because it's quite incredible.
It's really I'm so sorry.
Hello, everybody. My name's Barney, and I sing countertenor in VOCES8, which actually means most of the time I take the second alto part. I've been in the group since it began. I founded it with my brother Paul just over 15 years ago, and as well as being the alto, I'm also the nominal artistic director. I was a chorist at Westminster Abbey when I was growing up, and then I studied music at the University of London, and subsequently over in Switzerland at an early music academy, being a countertenor in Basel called the Schola Cantorum. These days, as well as singing in the group, I also do quite a lot of conducting. And in my spare time, I love to play golf, and I also love anything techie. So big kudos to Jamie for all the work he's been doing on putting these stay-at-home choir things together, because that's the kind of stuff I love. If you've been watching live from London, then getting all the cameras set up and all that kind of stuff is the type of thing I enjoy. But it's absolutely fantastic to be here. I say I'm a conductor. I'm not sure I've ever led a rehearsal of the amount of people who are likely to be in the room when I do my sectional. So that's really, really exciting. And thank you for having me.
Great, thanks, Barney. Shall we move on to Blake?
I think Barney's now a full-time techie. In fact, he's been the person running all the live from London stuff, kind of behind the master computer, controlling all the camera angles, along with Paul as well, actually. So the two of them have really upskilled, shall we say. My name is Blake. I sing tenor one in the group. I'm from America originally. I grew up in Michigan and didn't really start singing in choirs until college. I was mostly kind of an indie rock kind of guy, had a lot of garage rock bands, practicing my emo Yelp and all that kind of thing. But came into some jazz singing in college, really, and then kind of took off from there. I was a member of Cantus after that, and then a member of Chanticleer, and then VOCES8 swept me up and brought me across the pond. So here I am today in VOCES8. I also did the arrangement of this tune, Caledonia. So in my spare time, I do quite a bit of arranging, and also I'm very into whiskey. So I now live in Scotland, which is a good place for that. And any of our Scottish fans, do say hello. Next up, I have to introduce the Scotsman of the group. This is Ewan, who sings second tenor.
Hi there, everyone. Yeah, so as Blake said, I am Scottish. I've actually just almost finished my first season with VOCES8 now, but I originally come from Edinburgh, and then I studied music in Newcastle at Newcastle University before moving up to Glasgow, where I studied at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland as well. And then after that, I spent a year as a VOCES8 scholar, much like Katie. I spent a year doing that, and then when the job came up, I ended up auditioning and getting the job and everything. And yeah, when we're not singing, which is quite a lot recently, when we have some spare time, I like to try and go for walks, go and see some of the beautiful countryside that we have up here in Scotland, around near where I live. So yeah, hopefully going to get a bit more of that if it stops raining anytime soon, which would be great. But yeah, that's about me. I think move on to the basses now.
Thanks, Ewan. Let's find Chris. Chris must
be
there somewhere.
Hello, everyone. Very nice to meet you all. I'm Chris. I'm talking to you from Essex in the south of England. I, like many of my colleagues, started singing in my local church choir. And then I studied music at the University of Cambridge, and I sang in the choir of Trinity College there. It was a marvellous choir. And I joined VOCES8 straight out of university. So yeah, depressingly similar to many of my colleagues. What do I enjoy doing? Well, I like cooking, walking, a bit of cycling. And I've also, like Barney and Paul, been learning to be a television director in the last couple of weeks as well. So that's me. On to my friend in the bass section, Johnny.
Hi everyone, great to meet you, virtually at least. My name's Johnny, and I have been in the group now this is my 6th season in the group now. And I, like Chris, came straight out of the choir of Trinity College in Cambridge, where I read music. Before that, I was a chorister way back when in Winchester Cathedral. And I'm joining you now from the beautiful lands of the county of Suffolk. Which is looking very, very nice in the sun. Although I can't show it to you because it's a bit out the window. But anyway, yes. So I hope you're all doing well, and passing it back to Paul now, am I?
Yeah, thank you, Johnny. And I think we're going to get started with the music in just a minute, but it's very nice for all of the members in VOCES8 just to have a chance to say hello. And for all of you who are going to be taking part in all the different workshops and sectionals in the coming weeks, I hope you'll get a chance to know them much better, and do spend time thinking about all of the fun questions you can ask them. Obviously, there's going to be loads of opportunity to chat to people through the Stay at Home Choir network and through all of these sessions. But if you do have any other questions, we always try to be as open and quick responding to people as possible. So you can find us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all those places. If you want to send us a message, then please do so, and we will try to get back to you with any help that we can give you. I'm actually, one thing that I've just mentioned a little bit to Tori, and I don't know if Young Moo is actually here with us at the moment, but one thing I'm hoping I might get you guys to help with in the coming weeks is my friend Young Moo, who's based out in Philadelphia. He's been designing an app to help virtual choirs so that you can record and watch what you're recording just off one device. So we're hoping in the next couple of weeks it's going to be something that's available to share, and we'd love to use you as people to pilot this new app, which he's determined to get out into the world and help make virtual choir participation a bit easier, because we're aware that singing in your living room is not always the most fun thing to do, but it gets us to such an incredible end. And I think that's our big goal here. We're going to make something beautiful with you in the coming weeks, and I know I'm super excited to see the outcome, especially now having seen the Swingles one go live yesterday, which I thought was fantastic. I think you've heard enough from me, and I think we should get to those scores. So I'm going to hand back over to Blake, and I hope you guys have a really enjoyable session, and we'll see you in the coming weeks. So Blake, over to you.
All right. So this is one that I arranged, and it's really become a favorite of mine. Obviously, so I mentioned that I moved to Scotland. How many people do we have here who actually are currently in Scotland or are from Scotland? Just give us a wave, maybe. I'm just going to cycle through.
Let me just see if you can.
Yeah, I can scroll through. So yeah.
Blake, sorry, one sec. You need to unmute yourself again.
Oh, sure. Cool. So yeah, it looks like about 2 people per screen, which is quite a good cross section, I would say. And I've just really fallen in love with the song. When I first came upon it, probably when I was 16 or so, my best friend Graham introduced me to it, and I didn't really like it. Maybe because my little brain wasn't really big enough to comprehend the kind of wistfulness in it. But I sort of thought it sounded like a country song for some reason. I sort of thought it was like, Caledonia, you're calling me, kind of thing. And since then, I've really kind of begun to enjoy it more and more. Our record label Decca asked me to arrange this one, and that's kind of when I really dived quite deeper into the meaning behind it. For those of you that don't know, Caledonia is actually the Roman name for Scotland, so that's the Latin version of Scotland. It's the name that they gave to the country at the time. And I think the country certainly really embraced it kind of as an unofficial national anthem. I know not everybody likes it, but it's still often played in pubs and bars. People cover it all the time in Scotland, all throughout the UK. And I know that for many of you who live in the UK, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, literally. You might even be sick of it by now. But for me, it's kind of a new thing to stumble upon, walking into many of these restaurants and pubs and just hearing the song all the time up in Edinburgh. But I think it's kind of has this message of wistfulness to it, and also a message of missing home, which may seem a bit ironic for a choir that stays at home, I think. But if we unpick this a little bit, I think we can kind of come to something even grander, this realization that many of us are kind of enclosed in these walls and roofs that actually, we call our home, but really home for us is something that is more of an emotional feeling. Or maybe it's friends who are scattered across the world from us these days. Certainly for me, my family's over in the US. And so when I sing Caledonia, even though I've been staying at home for months on end here, I definitely think of them. And I think that's something we can bring to this, that it's not just necessarily a place, but it could be a person or a feeling that we love and treasure. We're going to really dive into some crazy things in this piece. Maybe some things that we haven't necessarily explored with other choirs before, which are kind of like instrumental textures, behaving more like strings and horn instruments. And that's something that we do quite a bit with VOCES8. I think we're going to have somebody else talk even more about that. But I'll pass it on to them. I'm really excited to have you guys sing this one. And if you have any questions, do drop me a line. It's quite easy. blake@voces8.com is the email address. So be very happy to hear from any of you if you do have any questions. Great to meet you all. And I'll pass it on to whoever is next.
Thanks so much.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Blake, thank you so much. It's really good to hear all of your thoughts on this. Now, we've got plenty of things to work on. Sorry, Tori, I realised I jumped in at exactly the same time as you and heard it about 10 seconds later. I can see the delay in the screen. Blake and everybody from VOCES8, thank you so much for such great introductions. Now, of course, before we start singing, we need to make sure we are properly warmed up. Now, in the interests of speed for this session, we will do a lightning fast warm-up, which so far in Stay Home Choir, we like to split these into 3 main parts, but we're going to whiz through them. To begin with, I'd like to encourage you from the very outset of this project to think of your warm-up as if you were an athlete. Singing is such an athletic, and it takes your whole body to sing well. So to start with, if you're able, please, could you join me standing up, and we'll start with our physical warm-up. Great. If you're not able to join me standing, that's absolutely fine. Find a sitting position or however you are that's comfortable for you. And to start with, could we reach up, please? And if lockdown has had the same effect on your clothes and they seem to have got smaller, you may need to pull your t-shirt down like me. Great. Leaning to one side, please. Good. Enjoy that stretch. Reach up as high as you can and to the other side. Good. And leaning backwards slightly. Careful, not too far. This is just to warm the muscles up. And leaning forwards. And leaning backwards. And forwards. And backwards. And just continue praising VOCES8 like this. We'll do this for probably 45 minutes. Great, that's quite enough of that. Have a bit of a shake out. Shoulders back. And shoulders forwards. If anything is uncomfortable for you, do change it as you wish. You are aware of your own body. Make sure you know what's comfortable. One shoulder forwards and the other shoulder backwards. Here comes the easy bit, switch. That's the first time I've ever got that right first time. And switch again. Can you do it twice? Good. Shake out one more time. One last stretch up. And now you're going to bend at your hips. And you're going to reach forward and bend over and go nice and relaxed. Bending from the hips, let your back bend over. Shake your shoulders. And very slowly, to a count of 10, we're going to slowly come back up with the head being the very last thing that comes back up. You're going to slowly stack your vertebrae one on top of another, very, very slowly coming back up. Do not rush this. Make sure you continue to breathe. 1, 2, to a count of 10. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, don't rush. 8, 9, 10. Good. Final thing. You are the world's most boring puppet. You have a string connected to the top of your head, connected to the ceiling. Let that string go loose. And now, just as we've done before, extending through the back of the neck, pull that string until you find a nice standing position. That should be pulling through the back of your neck, lengthening the back of your neck without you raising your chin and without you sticking your chin down and getting 4 or 5 chins like I seem to do when I do that. Never figured out why. Good. Thumb on your belly button, please. And let your hand rest beneath it. These are your lower support muscles. Those of you that have always wondered what on earth is support, it just means these muscles around here and the muscles around the back that engage when we sing well. Note, that doesn't mean we engage them to sing well. They engage when we do sing well. Go. Good. Now this is my favourite one. Before I move to Tori for 2 minutes, could you all lean in close and show me mackerel lips, please? I'd like you to do your best impression of a mackerel. It looks like this. Quick, someone take a screenshot.
Done.
Beautiful, thank you. Now, this is to remind you that we want this big, long, lengthened ooh vowel from the very top of your range to the very bottom of your range. Lower voices, that means using your falsetto. Woo, woo, woo. And higher voices, that means using your head voice as high as you're comfortable. This is not about pushing the voice, this is about exploring your whole range. And it sounds like this. I want you to see if you can navigate these 2 little speed bumps, possibly more, that you will notice as you move through your range, like this. Nice and relaxed. See what you can do to navigate those speed bumps. Let's go. Off we go. Imagine you found £5 on the floor and you have a very pleasant surprise and you breathe in as you do it and it looks like this. Show it to me, go. Oh, there we go. Got a smile from all of you. And we've even got some yawns from some of you. Good. That is your soft palate raising. Again, one more time, and then Tori, over to you. That is a great way to explore your range. Tori, just a couple of minutes on vocal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was lovely when you guys all flopped over. Everybody just disappeared. It looked like sort of the entire Zoom conference had just left. And then slowly you all grew up from the bottom of your screens. It was a really enjoyable thing to watch. Great. Jamie's already sort of started opening out what's going on vocally. I know that we're all ecstatic to be working with VOCES8, but for this, I want you to pretend that you are desperately, desperately sad. And we're just going to tap into all of this nice sort of mask resonance. So you're desperately sad. Maybe someone has told you that you can't work with VOCES8 after all, and you're going to say, oh no, go for it. Oh no. Oh, it's not time for panto season yet, but it's sadder than that. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Yes, exactly right. Good. Let's just gently remember these are vocal stretches. They're not, you're not singing yet. You're just sort of getting in touch with the same kind of sounds. You're not trying to run before you can walk. So we're just going to inch that range wider and wider as we do a few more of these. So maybe a few little sobs. Go for it. Oh no. Right down to the bottom. Oh no. It's got a bit of finality to it, that one. And now we'll go right up to the top. Oh no! Go! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Why me? Why me? Why me? Oh no! Oh no! Good. Seems very, very silly. If you're not a previous stay-at-home choir singer, you will quickly learn to lose your inhibitions in the service of good vocal technique. What this does is it really gets you placed right at the front. So we've got this lovely mask resonance that is very, very similar to a sung sound. Actually, there's not a lot of difference between oh no and oh no. It's sort of similar placement in your face. Placement in your face. Is that placement? Who knows? Anyway, I'm so keen to get into the score that we're going to leave it there and we're going to jump straight in. So what we've asked VOCES8 to do is to pick out a little section of the score that they think opens out our understanding of it. It could be something that's tricky notes-wise. It could be something overarching that we need to think about when we're doing the whole piece. But the idea is that we'll have started unpacking the arrangement of Caledonia that Blake has written so beautifully by the end of this session. So I'm going to pass over straight away. I think we're going to go in voice order again. Am I right? Is it Andrea first?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. I'm feeling nice and relaxed as well in my body now. So my point of this is that is something that we talk about in VOCES8 quite a lot, actually, which is we all get really wrapped up thinking about very small details with singing. So often we're thinking so hard about the technical achievements and trying to get that tiny little bit right or tuning those chords. And of course, all of those things are so important to making a really good performance. But I think it's so important that we just keep that feeling of the bigger picture always thinking about sort of zooming out and thinking about what the song is about, what the vision is always, and just that constantly letting that inspire you and also influence the way that you're singing. And that's the thing that's going to make this really genuine, I think, and that's a really important thing in our music making. So my point is actually a kind of a question to you guys and a request of you guys, which is before we start the rehearsals next week in the sectionals, I'd really love you to pick out an image. Each one of you find an image of something that this song inspires in you. So that's the feelings of home that Blake was talking about earlier. And that can be anything. It can be a place, it can be your home, it can be a certain part of your home. But it can also be a person. It can be an image that maybe
Can't hear anything.
Kind of represents a kind of a feeling. So if you can find a visual kind of representation of it, then that would be really great. I think somebody's needing some sound help there.
Everybody, you're going to
Sure.
have to unmute yourself again. Just give me 1 second.
No worries.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, it involves a little bit of imagination sometimes, depending on what that feeling of home is for you. So yeah, trying to find, it might be something totally abstract instead of a specific place or a person. It might be food. It might be a smell that makes you think of home. It could be all these different types of senses. And I'd really like you to have that image accessible when you're doing the rehearsals, and especially when you come to record the piece at the end. Because I think it's really that feeling of sort of continuity of always reminding ourselves of the feeling of what this song means to you. And that's part of the beauty of it, is that it means something different to everybody, and it all means something different to you than it means to me. I did think about showing you a picture of what I would consider if I was doing this exercise, but actually I sort of stopped myself, and I don't want to influence you too much with what I would have, because this is a really personal decision. So I might choose, a particular thing, and you'll be somewhere completely on a different page, and that's great. Just something that really inspires you, and have it accessible right next to you when you're singing, and just keep that really great feeling of comfort and home with you all the time.
Thank you so much, Andrea. And Eleanor.
Great. Yeah, so I'm going to narrow in a little bit on kind of Andrea's very much gone sort of broad with what she was talking about. I'm going to narrow in a little bit technically. So one of the things that I find really beautiful about this piece is how we all play different roles at different points within the song. Sometimes we are at the forefront of the texture as a soloist, or we have the text. Sometimes we are a bed of sound for everybody else to sit on. And when we all play those roles well, the piece really comes together, and it's really, really stunning. But sometimes we have to think quite technically about how to create those sounds well. And one section that I've found in the score is bar 43 into 44. And then this section for all the parts is where we suddenly have text, and how we kind of treat that differently from the sound we were creating before. So for example, when there's the trio that myself and Andrea and Katie sing, we are going to be at the forefront of the sound, and to create that lovely texture underneath on the ooh sound, we're going to have to use some of what Tori was using in her warm-ups. So the ooh sound rather than ooh, which is much more forward and in the mask. So I'll just try and get a note. So if everyone really tries to explore this sound a little bit, so if we think about we're pulling the sound towards us and we're using a really heady sound like this, ooh, quite airy. Can everyone try and do that? And ooh. And if we all create that sound, and sometimes putting a little bit of breath through the sound, which isn't something to do all the time, but for very specific cases, it can create a really lovely bed of sound. And then when we move into the text, so from bar 43 for the sopranos, we'll go, ooh, and I have tried and I've kept on trying. And it'll be much more further forward in the mask. So if we all just sing that together, ooh, and I have tried and I've kept on trying. Stolen dreams, yes, there's no denying. And here we can be much more expressive with the sound. And it's a chance for us to shine a little bit more and come out of the texture. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about exploring, how we play different roles throughout the song, and sticking to those roles will really help create a lovely overall texture across the board.
Sure, I think it's on to me next. So something I love to think about in this piece is all of the different instruments that we play in this piece, a bit similar to Elle, changing how we how we resonate. So quite a lot of Tories one, we were doing stuff in the mask, which is excellent and exactly what we want for singing. When we're thinking about other instruments, we're changing some of the harmonics at the top, so we want to change where we're resonating. If you've listened to the original recording that we did with this on Enchanted Isle, it's scored for strings, for a string quartet, as well as for voices. In this version, we're taking on the role of strings as well as the voices, so we've got to cover both bases. So rather than having a really singery sound, particularly for some of the oh sounds, rather than having a oh, thinking about widening the sound. Oh, and also really picturing how a string player would do that. So if a string player's got a bow, there's quite a lot of tension moving from one note to the next note. Not tension here, tension is in phrasing tension. So rather than having oh, oh, really stretching those lines out. The instruments do change a little bit as we go through sections. So if you have a look in your score from bar 71 to 79, we like to think of the beginning of this section as being on strings, and towards the end of the section as it being a bit more brassy as the textures build up. So starting with quite a wide open sound, and what we start with an ah. Ah, can you have a go at that? Ah. So I've got the sound, I'm letting some breath through my sound, and I'm letting the sound feel quite wide, a bit like a soft cushion. When you get to the end of that section, we want it to be a little bit more brassy, a little bit more pingy. So bringing that resonance forward like Tori did in her warm-up. Ah. So have a go at doing that with me. Ah. So as you're learning this piece, have a think through so what instruments you might be at different points, and see if you can emulate that in your own voices.
And that's something we'll look into in a lot more detail as we go through the sectionals, because actually learning, something you'll hear us say a lot in the Stay at Home Choir is how does it feel? Rather than how does it necessarily sound, we want you guys to develop a physical sensation of what your singing sounds like. And with this, when you're placing the sound in different places, you can physically feel it in a different place. So we'll look at that as you go from sort of, exactly, as you go through those different sounds. If it doesn't make sense now, don't worry. We're here for weeks and weeks and weeks, and we will introduce all of these things to you. Great. Okay, we're moving on to Barney.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, one of the great things about being in VOCES8 is that we get to sing loads of really cool repertoire, pieces like this, which are actually really complicated pieces of music when you begin to unpick them, often in 8 parts with added harmonies and extensions all over the place, and different instrumental noises and all that kind of thing. But it's quite often happens that at the end of a concert, a member of the audience might come up to us and say, well, actually, I preferred the piece you sung right at the very beginning. And whenever they say that, the piece they're referring to is a 4-part hymn by Orlando Gibbons called Drop, Drop, Slow Tears. Now, I think it just goes to show that there's very little that is more beautiful than simple hymnal harmony. And one of the reasons that I love this arrangement is because it closes with a statement of the hymn, which is, I think, a bit of genius from Blake in terms of how he's chosen to structure the arrangement. Now, it sounds as though that should be quite a simple thing to achieve, but as with many technical things in life, that often the simpler it is, the more exposed it is, and then the more exposed it is, sometimes the harder it is to achieve. So in VOCES8, for example, we will spend the most amount of time on our intonation tuning a triad. A triad is often harder to tune than a chord with extensions. And there's many, many special skills that we think about when we sing 4-part harmony. And so I just thought I might introduce you to a couple of those now, some things to think about. So if you look at bar number 98 in your score, it's right at near the very end, you'll notice that we have a statement of the hymn. It starts, let me tell you that I love you and I think about you all the time. And one of the challenges, I think, of this project, certainly a challenge that we've come across when singing individually, when tracking individually at home, is trying to create brilliant 4-part harmony, simple 4-part harmony as one single instrument, even though we're all singing in different places. So some key skills that we think about are how we're pronouncing the words would be the first thing, because if we were to sing solo, let me tell you that I love you, as classical singers, we all think really to pronounce the words. We're all taught about diction, throw the text to the back of the hall, all that sort of stuff. Whereas in this type of music, in order to sound nice and folky, we actually want to really release the consonants quite a lot. Let me tell you that I love you. So that makes it sound a bit more folky. The other thing that we have to try to do is sound really as one instrument. So if everybody's doing a lot of pronunciation and singing it in different ways, then we're never going to sound like one. So we kind of think of it in the group a little bit like the perfect cake. On the outside, you've got on the very top, you've got a little bit of crunchy icing. So that would be Andrea. So Andrea puts in a little bit of sort of clean, crunchy consonant. And then the further into the middle of the cake you go, the softer it gets. And then as you get out towards the end, you know, every good sponge cake has that slightly burnt bottom. I love, you know, that kind of slight carbon taste on the bottom, which would be Johnny. So again, he's a bit crunchy as well. So regulating how much we are singing the words, depending on what part we are, is a really important thing. So I've got a little exercise that you can practice for this. And it's all just to do with about linking up the vowels. I'm going to sing it in baritone for now, because after I've been speaking, singing falsetto is a little bit tricky. So I would just like you to think about those words. Let me tell you that I love you, and take out all of the consonants and just listen to me once singing the melody without the consonants. Just sing those vowels with me, and now we can make them not very pronounced. So I can do them a lot with moving my mouth a lot. Or I can do them more of the ventriloquist act. So do the ventriloquist act with me this time. Maybe even put your fingers here so you can feel how much your mouth is moving. And now the last thing we're going to do is just drop consonants on the top. So that sounds like this. Let me tell you that I love you. All together. And let me tell you that I love you. Now that's a really specific way of singing, and a way that we wouldn't necessarily naturally do if we were by ourselves in our room. So we're going to be looking at those kinds of skills to see if we can get a really good single instrumental ensemble performance, even though we're singing from however many different countries. And that's the kind of technical thing that really excites me. So thank you for indulging me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Barney. I'd actually probably jump in here at this point and say, those of you thinking all of, I can see loads of great questions popping up in the chat. This is a great thing that you can get by listening to the guide tracks that VOCES8 have kindly made for us. It's a perfect way to sort of compare all of these things that Barney has just touched on, and Katie talking about the mask as well, and sort of moving it away into that wider sound will really help you find the context of that as well. So really do go and connect this with the learning tracks in a moment. Thanks. Who was next?
I'll say something really quickly. I know I've given a little spiel beforehand, but just a quick zoom in moment. If we look at bar 79 in the score, we have this big old chord here, which to me, kind of analyzing with my jazz theory hat on, is definitely a D major kind of sonority with an added sharp 11th in the alto 1 and also a 9th on top. Now, for these kind of sonorities, sort of Katie was mentioning earlier that we behave as these two different groups, and then we make string sounds and orchestral sounds. Originally, I did write this piece for string quartet and VOCES8, so choir and strings. And then this version that you have in your hands now is one that I rescored and revoiced for double choir. So essentially what the stay-at-home choir will be doing for a lot of this piece is actually behaving as an orchestral bed of sound. And there are moments where you should definitely be behaving as strings, but there are other moments where we can unlock some of the horn resonance. And this chord in bar 79 is definitely one of those moments. So with me, if you can just go, I'll go, nya, 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 just really forward in the mask. Ready? Nya, 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 nya. It's that kind of resonance that we want to unlock here, that buzz that's happening. Also, a great way to do this is just singing sort of nasal consonants like ming, 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 ming on ming, and kind of opening up that. Just try that on ming, ming, ming. Ready? Ming, 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 ming. And what you want is that sensation of the buzz, even when your mouth is open, even when you're singing an ah vowel. And so for me, this moment in the piece, right before we bring it back into the tenor solo, is kind of like climbing a mountain. I'm not sure how many of you have climbed Arthur's Seat in Edinburgh, but it's this really cool, kind of an ancient volcano, actually. I think it's volcanic rock, but it's not too difficult of a climb. But it's for those of us that aren't mountaineers or anything, you can work up kind of a sweat for sure. And I think of this moment as climbing a mountain and getting to that top, that plateau, where you kind of overlook all of the sea and all of Edinburgh, and you can just see for miles. And the G sharp in that chord is kind of the thorn, that pain in your side after you've finally made it to the top, and you just have, whoa, and you get to enjoy this beautiful vista, but also you are kind of catching your breath. And then we come to the point of enjoying the moment of contemplation that happens with just VOCES8 in bar 80. So I think understanding these sonorities and understanding what your role is in the chords is very important. So for those of you that are singing in the D major sonority, that's D, A, and F sharp, can really bring those notes to the fore. Those of you that are singing E's and G sharp, for instance, in the alto, can think of yourself as a color note, or just the thorn in the side, the ache in the abs as we get to the top of the mountain before we enjoy the sight that's in front of us. I'm going to pass it on to our member who is from Edinburgh, Ewan, to give us some more feedback here. Maybe you can tell us about climbing Arthur's Seat, Ewan.
Thank you, Blake. Yeah, I can confirm that you will build up a sweat trying to climb Arthur's Seat, definitely. It is not the easiest climb sometimes. But yeah, I think what I want to talk about today is very much a specific point for the tenors, so I apologize to everyone else. But that is very close to that point that Blake was just talking about at the start of this bridge section in bar 72 onwards. So basically, one of the great things about this arrangement is that a lot of the sung parts in the accompaniment are really well scored and really flow quite easily. So that gives us plenty of time to work on the character and the instrumental sounds that everyone else has been talking about. But one particular moment for the tenors where you really need to have quite a bit of work on it is bar 72 to 73. So we're starting on a B flat and we're moving up to an E natural here. And that's what's called a tritone, or an augmented fourth, which is probably one of the more difficult intervals to sing. And personally, it took me a long time when I was learning this piece to get that entirely right. I think certainly singing it in context with everyone else at the same time is very useful. But as we're all in our own homes and everything, it can be useful to really work on this. So I'll just sing it for you quickly, just so you see here how it sounds. So as you can see, it's not the most sonorous of intervals really, but it's very much a case of using the physical work that Jamie was doing earlier and to try and build this into your muscle memory. So a lot of repetition is really what I'd advise. And doing this, you can also work with an exercise where you go up to the note just above it. So going to a fifth, which is much easier interval, and moving down. So maybe going, and if you keep going through that and sort of get that comfortable in your voice, and then as you go through it, just try and build it up and just try and see if you can work into moving just between the B flat and E natural. And then once it's into your muscle memory, we can talk about the sort of harmonic aspects of it, which I'm sure we will be doing a lot in the coming weeks as well. But yeah, very much just a tenor point of very much needs to be practiced. So I hope you all work on it really hard. Thanks.
You sound like the most beautiful siren that I've ever heard. Oh. In fact, that sounds so haunting. It's kind of a beautiful phrase to sing when you sing it like that. Could we maybe, Ewan, could we try a few of those, all of us together, maybe a couple of different pitches, just so we can start to build up that muscle memory?
Yeah, of course. So we'll just start at the pitch that we've got in there. So on a B flat, everyone with me. So it's I don't know how it feels for everyone else, but it can be a very strange sensation. Would anyone like to go from a different note, or are we good just doing that example, or what do you think, Tori?
I think that, well, certainly, I think just having done that and then sitting with it for a bit and just occupying that augmented fourth space makes it seem more consonant just from doing it once or twice. I really love the way that you went up the perfect fifth and then down. It makes it into a little melodic fragment in a way, doesn't it? So let's say if we start on the same note as you did and we do, it sounds like the open of some kind of horror film, doesn't it? Everybody together, ready, and. And let's start there. Let's do another one. So we're hearing the same interval, but in a different place in our voices. Ready, and. Now, that's the start of a film score, isn't it? That is Also sprach Zarathustra, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Or I think I'm seeing some bits
It's
of
Mars, isn't it?
Said
Isn't it?
Mars
There's
as
a-
well,
Oh,
isn't it?
that's it. Yes.
Yeah.
Bum, bum.
Let's just do one more here, just to put it in a slightly higher place for everybody. Sing it in a comfortable octave in your voice, but let's just practice one more of those, up to the fifth and then down to that tricky little augmented fourth. Ewan, would you demonstrate it for us one more time? And you see, once you've got used to approaching it from that direction, then just challenge yourself to just pitch that augmented fourth straight off. La, da, da. And then you'll be as comfortable with it as you are with every other interval. Actually, you don't sing augmented fourths generally in Western choral music as much as you sing tones, thirds, fifths. It's just a lack of practice. It proves that practice really does make perfect. So just, sit and be alone with your augmented fourth in the shower or on your way to work. And it will become much more familiar to you. Thank you, Ewan.
No problem.
And just for those wondering what on earth we're talking about when we refer to intervals, because I know some of you will be less familiar with the technical terms we might be using. We will try and make it as clear as we possibly can as we work through our rehearsals. Interval simply means the difference between one note and another. It's as simple as that. They all get cool names like compound, augmented, something or others. But they are just the way of measuring the distance between one note and another. So there you go. That's your first geeky term of the day, interval. For those of you, that's a new term. Great.
Thanks, Jamie. I'm actually going to do a bit more talking about intervals, if that's okay. But hopefully just the bare basics. I want to talk about the baritone part in particular, but this is a point that can be thought about by everyone. It's about when we sing and we look at a score, I wonder how many people look at it vertically and how many people look at it horizontally. What I mean by that is who looks at just their part and reads it along as if it was their own tune, and who looks at it and looks at all the notes at once as they move along. It's an interesting thing to think about when we look at a piece, because your approach shouldn't be the same for any two pieces. Every piece is slightly different. I'd say for the basses in particular in this piece, this is much more of a vertical piece. We are the fundament of the harmony at the bottom of the texture, and mainly the sopranos and a few of the other parts above us have more of the melody. One of the places that this is really apparent, and if you're a baritone in particular, this is something that you end up doing a lot, is singing the fifth, the low fifth at the bottom of the chord. So when we think about a chord, we've got the tonic, we refer to as note number 1, and then the fifth above that, so that's 5 notes up, and then the third in between, and that's our basic triad. And when we're tuning these chords, which obviously the fundament of all harmony, often we will have the bass 2s on the bottom on the root and the baritone on the fifth. So it's worth getting right because this comes up a lot. And there's all sorts of things we can do to think about this in terms of the sound and matching the vowels we make. I'm sure we'll go into those lots in the coming weeks. But it's a really crucial thing to get right. I don't want to say too much more because I know that Johnny's going to talk a little bit more about that. I don't want to step on his toes. But yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking about that in the coming weeks. Johnny,
just before we come to you, I just want to reassure anybody for whom that terminology is a little bit scary. We are myth-busting, technology-busting, music theory-busting people.
Geeks.
Geeks. If you have any questions, if you don't understand what a word means, if you're like, what is a note? What is a rest? post it in the chat and we will myth bust and terminology bust for you really quickly. We want everybody here to feel like they can access the music at their level. And if you want to just go by listening to the guide tracks and doing it by ear, that's okay too. But for those super geeks, I've just seen somebody in the chat talking about tonal centering. Don't you worry, there's going to be plenty of that. Thanks, Johnny.
Thanks, Tori. Yeah, well, one of the things about being at the bottom of the ensemble is that often in these sorts of things I go last and therefore have most of my points taken by other people. But I'm sure I can find something to talk about. Actually, I was thinking for points that applies to the whole ensemble, but particularly to the basses. And it's an idea of the sound that we're trying to make as an ensemble when we are doing particularly quiet, soft chords. And the sort of really good example of this is at the end of the piece in that sort of hymn-like section that goes from bar 98 to the end. And one of the ways that we like to think about this in VOCES8, and I know some other groups think about it in similar ways, is we have a device that we call the pyramid of sound. And I can see Jamie nodding his head. I'm sure he uses that one a lot in the Swingles. So the idea of this is as if you think of the shape of a pyramid, you start at the top with a small amount of material, and as you go down, the base gets wider and wider and wider. So when you're at the very bottom of the pyramid, you've got the widest amount of material, the most amount of material back at the bottom there. Now, of course, mostly when we're in choirs, we have numbers of people that are roughly equal amongst the parts. So you don't have 14 million basses and 2 sopranos, which makes it more difficult as you go up the ensemble, because the idea of it is that the sound that we're trying to make should match the position that we are in that pyramid. So when you're a soprano, for example, you might be thinking about your sound as somewhat thinner and smaller. And as we go down the ensemble, then we reach the basses and we have this much wider, sort of fatter sound that supports everything, all the material that goes on above it. And this is particularly, as I said, applicable to the hymn at the end, especially those really nice low D major chords that we're going to get when the basses are really at the very bottom or even deep below the bottom of most of our ranges. And one of the best things for us as bassists to do is not to try and dig out the sound from the bottom there. This kind of make or break time for a low bass. Yeah. So you either, you can go one or two ways. You can go make a sound that you think in your head sounds really big by putting as much sort of like weight behind it as possible. So going something like bah, and we think that sounds really good in our heads. Yeah. But you'll have, I can see my colleagues laughing. You can tell it's not a good sound. It may sound good to us, but doesn't sound good to the audience. What we do want to do is make the sound a lot wider, which means actually putting a lot more air through it. And it will come out as much, if not more, than the other sound. So rather than going the bah route, you want to go more like that. And it ends up getting through a lot of air, so you might have to breathe a lot more. That's fine. There's plenty of us. 736 in this room alone. We'll be able to support that number of breaths. We'll be able to cope with that. So use as much breath as you like, but try and make the wide sound rather than the really focused pitch sound at the bottom of the texture. And that will mean that everyone that's above us will have a nice comfy bed to sit on. Back to you, Tori.
That sounds great. Cool, great. Thank you very much.
General Melchett out there.
Sorry, what was that, Johnny?
I was getting my General Melchett out there from Blackadder. Bear.
That's a really good impression, actually. Great. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen of the Stay at Home Choir, it is now over to you. Some of you who are watching on YouTube will be submitting your questions in the YouTube chat. Never fear, they will get over to us. We have an army of Zoom elves and YouTube elves working to send all the questions our way. Other people have submitted their questions in advance via Eventbrite. But what I'm going to do is just give you a little shout out. I think Jamie's going to pick the first person, give you a little shout out. And if you are there, do unmute yourself and ask your question in person. So Jamie, who would you like to go to first?
Oh, now this is a great way to start the first way of getting attention in Stay at Home Choir. Give us a double jazz hand, please. One is never quite enough for me. Give us double jazz hands if you have a question in the Zoom room, and I'll pick someone out as soon as I can. Let's have a look. Who am I going to go for? Oh, there. Who was that? Who was that? Deb. How are you doing, Deb?
Okay, thank you.
What question do you have for VOCES8?
Okay, my question is actually, I've been trying to follow the guide track and using the score at the same time. And I've been trying to read where it says VOCES8 only, stay-at-home choir. And on the first 2 pages, to me, it sounds like bar 13, in the guide track, it sounds like stay-at-home choir is singing, but it says on the score, VOCES8 only. And I just want to be clear where I'm supposed to be singing and not singing.
That's bar 17, Deb, that we all start.
We start, so anything before that, no matter what it sounds like in the guide track, we don't sing.
Just have a listen to VOCES8 doing their thing. Thanks very much. Great. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, I cut you off. Sorry. There we go. Yeah. Great. Jamie, do you have you got the PDF there of questions that we've asked?
I do indeed. Tatiana Maria, I've had a fantastic question. Are you in? Tatiana from Austria. Are you in? Unmute yourself if you are.
Otherwise, we can ask a question for you.
I will zoom through. Otherwise, I will ask it for you.
Hello. Hi.
Hello.
Hi. All the best from Vienna. Hi. Yes, I was just asking, do you have any tips to keep people engaged in choral music during these times, other from participating in virtual choirs and things like that?
Who would like to?
It's a very good question.
Huge question.
Yeah, I can start with that. That's fine. I'm sure lots of people in the group have got ideas. It's a very difficult thing, and we feel a responsibility, Tatiana, as I'm sure Jamie does, and the stay-at-home, as a member of the Swingles and the stay-at-home choir too, in order to try and keep choral music alive. I would say, I mean, you mentioned virtual choirs, but I think there's a lot that can be done with virtual choirs. So the first thing I'd say is, to people who are maybe a little bit concerned about some of the technology, is I think it can be more straightforward than you think. So I think one of the most important things is that we keep experiencing this idea of community, and this is why the stay-at-home choir is so good. So do get involved in virtual choirs. Another thing, of course, that we're trying to do is to try and keep concerts going, because you know, it's very difficult for freelance musicians and for groups like ours as well, also to be around after COVID-19. And we hope that if you are part of a choir, that perhaps your choir doesn't just need to give a virtual choir experience, but could also look into the possibilities to stream. So I'd say there are 2 things there straight away. There's also a lot you can do creatively, I think, whilst you're sitting at home. So many ideas for learning to new singing techniques, and also perhaps to write and arrange music if that's something you enjoy doing. Trying to remain in touch with your creative side is something that I definitely think that you could try and do whilst you're at home. I don't know if any of my colleagues want to chip in after that with any other ideas.
I would just add that there is so much music out there to be found and to be listened to that already exists as well. And I mean, it's incredible to me the amount of music that I continue to discover that I didn't know was there, and new favorites that I've found during this time. So I'd really recommend continuing to, whether that involves you sort of digitally streaming music or rifling through the old record collection and rediscovering some things that you haven't got out for a really long time. I definitely, you know, just keeping your ears and your brain open to lots of different types of music is really refreshing. I'm really enjoying that.
Sorry, there we go. I've just got hoist by my own petard and forgot to unmute myself. I've got a question here from Mary Pickering. Mary, are you here? She's from Canada. Mary was asking, how do you control nerves during performance and recording? Do you have any tips for overcoming nervousness and stopping it from affecting your voice quality?
You'd be a rich person if you can come up. Go for it, Katie.
I'd say it's probably different for everybody in the group. We get some luck out of doing quite a lot of performances. So you do get a little bit used to it, but I'd say there's always an element of nerves in there. I like to spend as much time when I'm singing thinking about the words that I'm singing, trying to think about how they relate to my own life. So that kind of takes me, I'm very much still in the music, but takes me away from the kind of fear of the audience being there and distracts me from all of the things that could go wrong. It gives me something to occupy myself with. Also, I find just using your breathing before you go on stage or before you do any kind of performance really, really helpful. I remember reading somewhere that your brain goes on to a kind of automatic mode whenever you breathe out, but it's on a very much alive and awake mode when you breathe in. So I find breathing in for say 4 counts, and then making sure I'm breathing out for longer than those 4 that I'm breathing in. So maybe 8, increasing it to 12. Something that's you wouldn't expect it to work. And you kind of got to kid yourself to make it work, but it does work. Otherwise, the old general of if you stand in a really important superhero or big pose for like 3 minutes, it does wonders.
Yeah, I was going to mention the power pose. Always a really good option for beating nerves, but also using your nerves is a good thing as well. Sometimes it can affect your voice, but sometimes it can really help deliver a really driven performance if you're able to actually use the nerves that you have before. More.
Great, thank you so much. Now I have a question from Archie from South Africa. Archie, are you here?
Hi, I'm here.
Archie, thanks for joining us.
Can you hear me? Am I audible?
We can, you are, very well.
I really hope you can understand my accent. This is such an honor. I never thought I would be able to speak to you guys. This is kind of unrelated to this specific piece, but concerning VOCES8, how much time do you guys spend on homogeneity of vowels, especially when doing a foreign piece or even doing an English piece? How much time do you spend together and how much time do you spend apart? Because I know that can do a lot for balance and blend.
Great question.
Yeah, really good. I mean, I'd say that obviously everybody needs to find their own comfortable way in their own technique of producing all of the different vowels on the spectrum. And so we tend to come, with that kind of practice ourselves of knowing your voice well enough to be able to then come into the group environment and be able to like tweak things a little bit, play around with those ideas to you end up with something a little bit more in the middle. And so it really comes from the sort of personal preparation of knowing your own voice and doing enough that you can make all of those different things in your own comfortable way. But then being really, flexible as well when we come into a group environment. So there's certainly time spent in both realms, and it is about. Sometimes it's as simple as like looking at each other's mouths and going, I'm not making the same shape as that. And that sometimes fixes it. And sometimes it's way more complicated than that. And it's all muddled up with, different types of resonance and formants and all sorts of complicated things. So, yeah, it is a kind of a movable feast depending on the situation, but it is a really important thing because it affects so much of the sound in general and the tuning of the music, as I'm sure you know. Maybe somebody else has something to add as well from the group.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have language coaches come in for foreign languages. Even German, which is a language we feel pretty confident with singing, we still have someone come in and work with us. We're recording it, for instance. But especially for languages, Russian, things like that, we have to have someone kind of speaking us through and giving us demonstration. But we do something really interesting in VOCES8, which is we slightly kind of neutralize the vowels as we go up the ensemble. So the basses make, it's kind of really, really similar to the pyramid of sound. The basses make the most harmonically complex sound, which maybe if it's an ah vowel is a much more brassy, bright sound, or it could be just expansive and breathy, but it has the most has the most sort of upper resonance to it, upper frequency. And then as we move up in the ensemble, actually what we're trying to do, Andrea's job, for instance, is to act as an overtone to the lower sounds. Very geeky stuff, but what that means for her vowel is that she's slightly neutralizing the vowel on top. So if Johnny's singing ah, like he was demonstrating so wonderfully earlier, Andrea might be singing something a little closer to ah on top, which is just closing in just slightly to sort of nobilize the vowel, we'll say. And that's something I think is maybe unique to VOCES8, or something that we definitely think about. Other groups have theories about that, but it makes what I think is a more sort of harmonic-based sound, one that it rings more naturally in our universe rather than something that is bright and brassy. We can kind of do both of those, but I'd say the house style is to slightly neutralize as we move up in the ensemble of the vowels.
Yeah, definitely. Good. And we've got time just for one more question. But before that, I've just seen some people asking in the chat about divisi. The general rule for divisi in this piece is look for where you've got stems up versus stems down in the notes on the score. Where the stems are going up, that'll be a bass 1 line. For example, I'm looking at bar 44. You've got 2 notes out of the 3 have stems up. That'll be bass 1s. You can choose whichever of those lines you'd like to sing if you've chosen to be a bass 1. If you're a bass 2, I'm afraid you've only got one choice, and that'll be the notated E at bar 44. Now there's one exception, and that is at bar or measure for our American friends, 61. Where we've got the alto 1 part. We're actually just going to make a change to that and re-upload that to the website portal with the learning tracks. For anybody who's been asking, that is www.stayathomechoir.com, and you can click on the Caledonia tile. It's all beautifully teal and green and misty and Scottish, and you can find there the alto part at bar 61 is actually tutti altos, so sing what's written on the score with the stems down, so you'll sing the D and then the B and then the C sharp. So for those people who are eagle-eyed and had spotted that, we will be changing the alto 1 learning track just to pop that to the correct thing, but general rule is stems up will be the first, alto, tenor, bass, whatever, stems down will be the seconds. Now we've got time for one more question. And I'd like to go to a friend of ours in Guatemala, Francisco. Francisco Jose, are you here to ask the very last question of our session?
Hello.
Hello.
Am I audible?
Loud and clear.
Yes. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to speak to you. I am originally from El Salvador, but I am currently living in Guatemala. My question is out of topic, maybe. I was wondering, when are you coming back to Latin America? That's
a very good question. So good, I don't know the answer. But we have to say that we don't actually know when we're going anywhere yet. We're down to sing a couple of concerts in Italy in the middle of September, which we, at the moment, will be trying to fulfill, but even that's a little bit up in the air. And otherwise, a lot of our tours for the next few months have all been postponed. So hopefully in 2021 or 22, we'll be coming over to South America, or certainly Central America, which is maybe a little bit nearer where you live. But we will try to get to South America if we possibly can, because we would love to come and experience the amazing culture that you guys have down there. I think possibly the only person who's ever been to South America singing in VOCES8 is probably Blake, who I think traveled down as a member of Chanticleer. So it's something that we would absolutely love to do. And thank you very much for coming, as it were, all that way to this session today. It's a very long way away.
Yes.
And you've just simultaneously had 10 invitations to different parts of the world. VOCES8, you've had invitations to Philippines, to Venezuela, to Argentina, and to Guatemala. So you guys look like you're going to have very busy holidays over the next few years. Great. Ladies and gentlemen, that takes us to 7:15, and that is all we've got time for today. It's been fantastic to hear of the views and insights into this piece from VOCES8. I mean, who better to hear from than the arranger themselves? And maybe somebody should tweet at Dougie McLean and see if we can get him involved as well. So VOCES8, everybody, thank you so much for giving us your insights, for your openness and your musicality, and you've really set us off on a fantastic start. Stay at Home Choir, if you have any other questions, please send them in to us on Twitter. You can tweet. You're just at VOCES8, aren't you, on Twitter? At VOCES8. We are at Stay at Home Choir, all one word. You can get in touch on Facebook. You can send us an email to contact@stayathomechoir.com, and we'll pass on questions to VOCES8 and get some replies if you have anything pressing that you really want to ask. And we'll be seeing members of VOCES8 for the next 4 weeks, I think. Yes, that's it. So the project is 5 weeks in total, sort of, in that we've got 5 weeks of content, and we started last week, and we're going to have a wrap-up week shortly after the end of week 5, just to spur you all on with your recording. And we're going to have the final video released sometime in the autumn. So we've got four weeks coming up where we're going to be meeting an upper voice and a lower voice member of VOCES8 each week for sectional rehearsals, and that's when we're going to get really into the nitty-gritty, helping you out with all of the notes. We're going to delve deeper into these technical queries, and give everybody a really thorough knowledge of this beautiful piece. So from myself and Jamie and Rachel, who's been manning the technical side of the Zoom today, and of course from all of VOCES8, it is traditional in Stay at Home Choir to applaud with a double jazz hand. So can we please have a double jazz hand for all of VOCES8? Thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge with us, and we can't wait to see you soon. Great. All right, I'm going to let you unmute yourselves. It's going to be complete carnage. Bye and see you soon.
Bye.
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 Oh, great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. We love you.
Bruce, good to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Obrigado.
Gracias. Adiós.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you. I love this.
Gracias por todo. I love you back.
Gracias. Gracias.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Loving the cat.
Everybody.
Sorry. Welcome, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, what a lovely chaos.
Lovely chaos. I love that. Call out. I like it.
Aloha.
Hi, Andrea.
Thanks everybody for joining. See you soon.
All what to say. Bye.
Gracias. Adiós.
Thanks, MJ.
Thank you. Another fabulous session.
Thanks. Top 2 for this one.
Signing off
Thank you so much, guys. You've been part of our largest